Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities, and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella Rodiguero. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. My guest today is Catherine Craig. Catherine is a seasoned HR executive with a strong background in strategic human resource management. As a board member and non-executive director at Transcord Community Transport, she brings her expertise in HR, sales and marketing, and P&L oversight to drive the organisation's strategic direction. With a master's in strategic HRM, Catherine has successfully led projects in employee relations, business restructures, and change management. She was a 2015 Telstra Businesswoman of the Year nominee and is Managing Director and founder of NEXUS Human Resources, a HR organisation that delivers strategic human resources solutions to clients across various industries. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Estella. It's wonderful to be here.
So, Catherine, let's start at the beginning. How did NEXUS come about?
Great question, Estella. And I often think about how far I've come in such a short period of time. But I really have the pandemic to thank for pushing me into really focusing on HRM as a career change, if you like, and a completely different profession. Prior to NEXUS, I had a senior global role with an organisation called Kappa, which was in the aviation industry, and managed a global team. Bringing those kind of skill sets into NEXUS has allowed me to think like a C-suite executive and not siloed as, and I don't mean to say it as just HR, but I can have the bigger picture overview when I'm talking about HR. So basically, NEXUS came about from the pandemic. There was a lot of organisations that needed HR help, particularly with furloughs and wind downs of businesses, etc. So I was able to provide that assistance solo at the time. The business grew very, very quickly, and we changed our name to NEXUS Human Resources, and NEXUS means to connect. And what we like to do is redefine, redesign, and reignite HR with businesses. So we do that through connecting. So here we are today, 3 years down the track and thriving.
That is brilliant. So what you brought is an absolute wealth of experience that goes over and above just the HR. So it's not siloed. It's a holistic view of a company and the structure and everything that goes into that mix, as you say. But we're here because there's been some significant workplace changes that have came into effect in July 1, but there's also going to be some that come in on the 26th of August. Now, if I'm confused, a lot of people are confused. So this is over to you now as the expert. Can you talk us through what those changes are and what businesses what will be the impact on businesses and employees, I guess?
Absolutely. And I think this is the time where I really say, look, strap in. There's a lot of information to deliver, and get a coffee. Let me go through this with you. And I'm going to do it at a high level, obviously being a little bit time poor. But, when we go back to the 1st of July, the federal government has introduced via the industrial relations sweeping reforms across things like workplace changes on the increase of minimum wages. We have that impacting businesses now because they must adjust their payroll systems to comply with new rates affecting budgeting and financial planning. So there's pressure that's coming from every aspect, which can potentially impact productivity. We have new casual employment rights. They actually come in on the 26th of August, and I'll go a little into those in a little bit more detail shortly.
I was hoping you would, yeah.
Yeah, expanded parental leave entitlements. So that's just going to be increasing every 2 weeks. It's at 22 weeks now. It's going to go to 24 weeks in 2025. So there's more time out of that cycle of productivity within the year. We have enhanced employee protections against sexual harassment. Now, this one's really, really interesting because it can not only be a business that's going to be exposed, but an individual as well. So businesses really need to be across this from a protective perspective. We've got new requirements for flexible working arrangements as well, which are now legislated. That means there's expanded rights for employees to request flexible working arrangements with stricter criteria against employers refusing it. So again, the pressures on the business. We assist by making sure that it's our wheelhouse. We get it. We know how to help you navigate these changes in your business so you're ahead of it. I think some of the challenges at the moment is so many businesses just don't know because there's so many other things that they're concentrating on. But industrial relations aren't accepting a "I didn't know" or an "ignorance is bliss" response from employers. Now the expectation is you must be across it. And this is where it's important to have experts in that field assisting you and supporting you through that. So you've got your contacts there to be able to, what does this mean for my business? How is it going to impact it? Additional changes that are coming in from the 26th of August, which is only a short couple of weeks away, is the same job, same pay. Now, we've heard about this on radio and TV advertising. And just to give you some clarity around that, it really is impacting businesses that use the labour hire companies.
Okay.
That could add an additional 30% in wages to the bottom line for companies that use labour hire companies, because basically what they're saying in a nutshell is if you have an employer that is engaged within your business from a labour hire company, they should be on the same pay as your permanent employees. So it becomes very tricky and another burden financially for businesses. So there's got to be a bit of give somewhere and how we navigate that. Also, it means for employers with regard to that same job, same pay, that they're going to have to really be ahead of it and future planning their financial forecasts as well. If there's a change of government, will these legislative processes be repealed? We don't know. We don't know. I mean, businesses are hoping that they will, but at the moment it's all for the employee. And what's happening with the pendulum, is it going to swing back or are we going to have some status quo? It's really difficult to know. Casual employee definition changes. Now, I know that was...
I was interested in that because a lot of our, being hospitality and tourism, we have a lot of casuals and cafes. So probably that's a good one to try and unpack.
So it is, and that's changing all the time. There was the onus on the employer last year to be able to approach the casual employee and say, look, you've been here for 6 or 12 months. We now would like to offer you permanent employment. So the responsibility was on the employer. That shifted and it's now on the employee. So employees who start as a casual will stay as a casual until their employment status changes. And that's until there's a conversion process or a Fair Work Commission order or accepting an alternative employment offer. But the onus now is on the employee to approach the employer and say, hey, I've been here for the prescribed amount of time and now I'd like to have some permanency. I think the thing to remember too is permanency doesn't always suit everyone.
Yep, absolutely.
Casual opportunities are there in that employment for a good reason. And it benefits the employee going, hey, this is great, works for me. It helps me maintain work-life balance. I've got a few extra dollars now to go towards my rising interest rate for my mortgage because I'm getting a loading. And if I go to permanent, I'm back to the award without any loading and it becomes, a bit of a financial strain. So I think we need to carefully weigh up the pros and cons of that. And, make sure where employers are taking individual preferences into account as well. Right.
So I'm still confused over the 1st of July versus the 26th of August. Do you think I'm not alone in that one?
Oh, no, I think probably everyone is. Me too. Because there's so many changes coming through. It's just that these changes were coming through in stages, Estella.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And there's other things that are happening in terms of employees now have the right to disconnect. We've probably heard a little bit about that through the grapevine. That can be problematic for some employers. So it's really, if they need to contact an employee after hours, it can't just be a random or sending emails and you must do this. And, it's that timeout. Okay.
So to explain that employee's right to disconnect, it's about not contacting employees after hours of
After hours.
working hours. Yeah. So why is there a need for change of that?
Well, I think it's a little bit cyclical. I think it's generational as well.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, different generational cohorts coming into the workforce now, they have a different perspective on how they want to work. We know the work from home, for example, was a driving force now with, your Gen X and Zs and, these alphas are coming through now as well. So, it's really changing that landscape. So I think with the right to disconnect where, let's face it, you and I probably had the experience where we didn't mind if our boss called us after hours because we knew it was probably for a very good reason. So that was okay, or it was just building that business relationship and whatnot. But now, these generation of employees now are basically saying, no, I've done my 8 hours, my 7.5 hours. That's it for me. I'm now going to concentrate on my work-life balance and I don't want to be contacted after hours. So I don't need to monitor my emails. I don't need to take phone calls. I don't need to read or respond to anything that you're sending to me. It just allows the employee to refuse phone calls that might come through at 9 o'clock at night, unless it's an emergency. I mean, these things happen. I think there has to be some balance there as well.
But I guess it's a two-edged sword because on one hand we're saying, look, you can work from home, you can work globally, you can work anywhere in Australia. We've got daylight saving, which let's just add to the story. And that is the one on one hand, the beauty of the blended working that we have now. But on the other hand, they're saying, well, we want all that, but at the same time, outside of that work time, we're not going to, we can refuse.
It's problematic, isn't it? There's a number of organisations we're talking to at the moment that are so frustrated with this. And what's important to look at and consider here is there's normally some awesome working relationships between business owners and their employees. I'm talking small businesses now. They're cultivating a great culture. And in come these forced changes that sort of upsets the apple cart.
It does.
And they're kind of going, well, what do I do? There's confusion for the employees too. And that's why I think there needs to be clear, open lines of communication between employees and between employers, and with the help of experienced people that are able to provide the right content and comments to be able to get that message across and continue to cultivate a positive culture within businesses. It's a long haul.
Having said that too, Catherine, we have known and we've probably worked in businesses where you've had a wonderful working relationship and you're behind the company, and then this would not be an issue, because we're really embedded in that culture.
Yeah.
And then something has gone wrong, and then the wheels have fallen off that relationship, or new owners have came in. Therefore, could the employee therefore go, you know what? You have been contacting me after hours. Is that, and that's
yes.
So that's the scary part of it. As much as you've got a wonderful relationship and it's working incredibly well, you probably have to adhere to it a bit.
And I think where they identified, they being the regulatory bodies, and a need for change is that there was a blurring of the lines within some businesses.
Yeah.
And but then perception is reality as well too. What could be perceived as blurring or inappropriate contact after hours to one might be, hey, it's only 25 to 6.
Yeah.
5 minutes after finish time. So, it comes down to a perception as well. But I think, again, having open, clear lines of communication and having conversations with employees to say, guys, there's going to be occasions when we do need to contact you, hopefully not too often, but it could be the nature of the business. Let's say it's an events business and something might go wrong with a supplier, or they get a last minute cancellation, or something happens, and there's the need then to have that kind of communication. I think if they have that understanding and agreement in the first instance, it's going to solve a lot of issues.
But Catherine, does that have to be a written agreement?
Well, they can have a written agreement. They can certainly disseminate that within the business, and they can have individual conversations, and there can be that agreement. They can have other specificities around that as well, don't contact me on holidays or those kind of things. But yes, it can be a written agreement. We've had this conversation, and we will both work towards making sure we support the right to disconnect, but understanding on occasion A, B, and C may happen, and there would be that need for communication.
Yeah. So when did these changes come into effect?
So they're the 26th of August.
They're the 26th.
Yeah. That's a couple of weeks away. I mean, it's frightening. This year is just flying by anyway. But at the same time, it's important for business to go, wait, I wasn't aware of this. What do I need to implement within my business so I'm protected? My favorite 4-letter word in business, including my own, is risk. Let's minimize it. So if we're ahead of all of this and we're following best practice, if we're aligning with what legislation is requiring business owners to do, if we're making sure that we're communicating, if we're making sure that every part of our business is supported by a very robust and functional HR support pillar, then you're 99.9% of the way there.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned earlier same job, same pay, and you went into a little bit. Can we go a little bit heavier into that? And this is again the 26th of August, this change that comes in, and it's about the use of labour hire companies.
Yeah.
What does this mean for employers, and when can a regulated labour hire order be made? So can we sort of talk to that a bit, because there's quite a few that are engaged through labour hire companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've put a few notes down here because it's a lot of information to unpack. But it is a key reform. Okay, so while some of the media is reporting that same job, same pay is really suggesting that the changes were to address wage, gender inequality, it's not. Or would it require an employer to pay a junior the same as it would a more senior employee? No, that's not the case. And there has been some blurring there. The changes really didn't have anything to do with that. It was really seeking to address the labour hire loophole. So it's closing those loopholes, right? Where host employers would use labour hire to deliberately undercut and avoid the bargained wages and conditions. So this is where the confusion lies, and why we need to have clarity around this as well. So rather than, I guess, undercutting, they're making sure that they're closing that gap now. So employers are really going to be responsible. So from November 1, 2024, the Fair Work Commission will have the power to make what the RLHAO is, requiring labour hire employees to be paid no less than what they would be paid if they were directly employed by the host employer. So that can have a big financial impact.
So is there specific industries that predominantly use these labour hire companies, and the advantages for those companies?
Well, I guess a lot of mining companies would use it. You're right, hospitality, events industries, etc., entertainment industries, because it's a bit switch on, switch off. It can be a bit seasonal as well. So this is where they're making sure that there's that equality. So just getting back to the RLHAO, it really is expected that any applications will be made predominantly by unions. So there we have another issue that's creeping into it where we have that kind of union component within a business, which can also be problematic.
And that brings up the workforce delegates, doesn't it? So workforce delegates are regulated workers, the union representative changes. What are those like, and what will that mean for businesses as well?
So that means that businesses, I'm just going to put this in basic speak here,
Yeah,
not fair work, but it basically means that that if you have a union member in your business, they can become a union delegate and they can have an overarching view of how your business is run and input into that as well. And the businesses will bear the cost of union. This is what they would like of union travel, in particular union get-togethers, etc., or where it's a training session, that's borne by the employer. So these kind of changes can be very tricky indeed. So we need to kind of be ahead of that as well. But just want to go back to remember that a small business is one that has less than 15 employees. That's a true definition now of a small business. So anything over that is considered a medium-sized business.
Right. Got it.
Mm.
Now, you mentioned some of the changes that are coming through, and particularly around that parental paid leave, and how it's going to increase by 2 weeks incrementally. So where this year it's 22 weeks, correct? And then the following year, 24 weeks. We've got future increases coming in quite a few things, haven't we? Those future increases in the superannuation guarantee rate, and there's a number of things. How do businesses prepare? It'd have to be vital for businesses to prepare. Looking at the following year, we've got on just as a very basic, you've got 2 weeks, more parental paid, but you've also got that incremental changes in superannuation and national minimum wage. Does that goes up at all?
Yeah, it does. It does on the 1st of July every year. The superannuation will be capped at 12%.
Right. Okay. That's
so 2025, and same with paid parental leave. And remember, the business isn't responsible for the paid parental leave. That Services Australia that provides the payment for that. But then we come into other sorts of other issues around unpaid parental leave, and that's a whole other.
And not to mention that you've got your employee off for 2 weeks longer than you would normally as well. So,
Correct. So it really, everything's linked. Everything's dovetailed. So this is where, and it's a great question you asked, Estella, around how do businesses plan for that, because they have to be future-proofing their business all the time and in front of that. And this is where we can start weaving in the strategy from an HR perspective. What kind of strategic things we can do to make sure we've got those engaged employees so we can retain them. Now, it's complex. We have our transactional HR, which is going to be things like, your everyday end of life cycle,
deployed
employment life cycle. You can go into that, can't you?
I don't think I will, though.
Be end of life for some of the business owners, but some of the end-to-end employment processes and whatnot. Sorry, don't say whatnot. End-to-end employment processes. We can have performance management and how we're going to be looking at appraisals and evaluations and so on, etc., and that more transactional level. But when we're getting into these legislative changes and how they're going to impact the business, in my mind, I encourage, and the conversations that I'm having with our clients now and other contacts, is let's get ahead of this. Yes. We want to have a workforce that is going to be invested within the business. So not be looking at what we consider to be or can be considered to be divisive legislative changes that are going to impact mum and dad businesses, for example, who have everything on the line already. So we need to make sure that, yes, we're going to be meeting what's happening with legislation and what the requirements are now with wage increases, etc. But we don't want to be going through that complete turnstile of new employees every 5 minutes. And, we need to get some strategy in here. So we've got a really cohesive, invested workforce within the business, whether it's 5 employees or 500. We all need to have that same mindset and that same culture. And, we can work then with these changes like the right to disconnect. We can have an agreement within the employees can have a stake in what that decision is as well, which again is going to engage them. It's all combined. It's like a long chain, but everything has a reason and everything impacts something else.
It's certainly been monumental changes in workplaces, hasn't it, since COVID, and particularly with the work from home and the blended working. So it's just going to be a complete change of environment and how we look at staff and how staff work for us or employees work for us, isn't it?
I think businesses should be looking ahead 10 years now.
You
I
think?
think they should be looking ahead at a minimum 10 years to see with this changing landscape and changing generational cohort landscape and how they view work, what is the business going to look like? We have to move and be ready for these changes. If you don't change now and don't start thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years' time, which isn't that far away, let's face it, you're going to get stuck in the mud. So businesses really should be evolving with this and planning what these changes are going to do, what potential changes can come, and how they can implement changes within their business to accommodate the changes in generational workers. But at the same time, I will say, use your knowledge bank, employers. If you've got a Gen X employee, they've got a lot of experience. Use that experience. They're your talent bank, they're your knowledge bank, extract that, and then you can start having your succession planning within your business as well.
Absolutely.
You've got some great experience to leverage.
One of the questions I want to ask was, looking ahead, what are some of the emerging trends in HR that you believe will shape the industry? And I was going to go in the next 5 years, because if COVID's taught us anything, it's that our world can change within, seconds, minutes, hours.
Absolutely. Seconds.
Yeah. So can I backtrack a bit? Can I ask you, the legislative changes that have came in, has that been, it seems like a lot. It seems like a lot has came in, but we haven't had that much before. Is that true? Or
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's just a change in government too, and just what their focus is on the economy and how they want to change industrial relations and what they want to do. Kind of polarizing from both sides of the pole there, but that's where we are at the moment. So we have to work with these changes. But I think that, we can adapt to them to make them work. It just means connecting and partnering with the right support to make sure that you can navigate these kind of tricky waters. I always say that any kind of business that doesn't have any kind of HR support or an HR function is like a rudderless ship. And you're just floating aimlessly, and it could be into very tricky circumstances. So it's best to know that you've got that wingman.
Yeah, that's
next
right.
to you to look after you.
And the importance now of that long-term vision on staff, given that, there's going to be incremental changes and things happening along the way. But what are some of the emerging trends that you're finding in HR that will shape the industry, do you think?
Well, I think, as I said, there's going to be an emphasis on employee experience. And we're already starting to feel that now with right to disconnect and work from home and having that flexibility. I think that focus on creating that positive employee experience is going to intensify their investment within the business, but it also means that we can encompass every stage of the employee life cycle. That's from recruitment to retirement. And that doesn't mean within the same organisation. I mean, those days are well and truly over. We want to spread that knowledge and experience for growth within other organisations and industries as well. But I think the impact of that, well, is that companies are going to have to invest more in technology, in practices, and really work to enhance employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more touchy-feely, and all that engagement and well-being.
Yeah.
You know, there's a number of organisations now that offer EPA to their employees. So it's a very independent employee support assistance program where they can unload if they need to. So that goes a lot towards making sure that, you know, we're certainly supporting employers and employees. There's one thing I will bring up too, that just while I'm on that EPA, is and I think this is an emerging trend right now, is the psychosocial hazards that are starting to appear within organisations and what's happening with that. And it's now an industrial relations crosshairs, same with Work Health Safety Queensland, that businesses really need to be aware of what these psychosocial hazards are. There's 14 triggers, and you wouldn't even think that one of these would be a trigger, for example. But there's 14 identified triggers now. And we have to make sure as employers that we're not exposing any of these hazards to our workforce. So that can be a discussion for another day, perhaps, but it really is quite complex.
Can you give me an example of some of the triggers that we're discussing?
Yeah, sure. Some of it could be a perception of what might impact one's mental health.
Right.
I'll give you a very broad example.
Yeah.
Let's say my colleague, we work in an open plan environment, and my colleague has what I consider to be an inappropriate or slightly offensive image on their desk, photo, screensaver, something like that. And I am finding that is really distressing me. It's impacting me. I'm feeling that I'm not getting supported by management when I told them about it, and that really offends me. And it's impacting my mental health. I have other issues happening outside separately in my life, but when I come into work now, this is exacerbating what I'm already feeling. So maybe a very broad example. It's just, you know, racism, bullying, all of these kind of things. And a lot of them are so, you know, that they're just to the individual, what you might consider bullying, I might not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know, but employers now have to be very careful because it's a real thing. And it's another example of where Work Health Safety Queensland refused to accept ignorance as bliss. The onus is on employees to make sure they're across it. So their HR function should be saying to them, or their outsourced HR function, hey guys, you need to know about this, and we need to make sure you're across all of these triggers, how to manage it, what to do, how we can implement training and support around this so you're covered, you're in front of it. That's quite tricky. So that is one of the emerging trends. And I just had to sort of segue that little bit of information while it was still top of mind. But also the rise of hybrid workplaces, that's going to continue being an ongoing trend. I think that AI in workplaces, that is fascinating and frightening for me at the same time. I don't know if you've used ChatGPT or anything, but sometimes I think, wow, like that. Wow, what, you know, wow, it's just amazing. But integrating advanced HR technologies into businesses and AI, I think, is going to revolutionize many HR functions. You're still going to need your HR in person there to manage complex issues. I mean, this is really going to support it and make these efficiencies more available. But also, you know, make your policies more robust as well. I think the HR professionals are going to need to upskill quickly because this is really ramping up very fast.
Wow. I didn't even think of AI. It didn't even come into front of mind but now you say it, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Digital transformation is going to impact massively.
Absolutely. And that's at the mental health and well-being. So going back to those psychosocials and the focus on DEI, so the diversity, equity and inclusion.
Of course.
That's quite big. Data-driven HR, decision-making processes. I wrote a few of them down here. Personalised learning and development. So that's going to be a continuous learning and development programs, and the onus will be on the business owner to make sure there's access to that. And that's going to be really focused and tailored for professional pathways. That's going to emerge as something that's going to be very beneficial for the businesses. Gig economies.
Mm, mm, mm.
You know, if we sort of don't think about them, but they're there and they're
Yeah, they
becoming
are.
part of mainstream now. Yeah.
So when you look at that professional development, it is an impact on businesses, and it will be part of what businesses need to do. Are we talking about businesses that are small to medium having to do that as well?
Look, I think there's no definition around that. I think it's really going to be a benefit if they have a more sophisticated learning and development. It doesn't matter what size their business is, but it's about sustainability.
The other point of being is that is going to be another financial impact to businesses. But at the same time, the nature of employees is it's very transient. So you can put a lot of money, and this is becoming really quite a big thing, and it's because the change. Now we have more jobs and we have people, and so we're getting a lot of headhunting happening. There's a lot more advantages being put out for joining and taking from other companies, and so really it is going to be so vital that the environment that these people are working in is an environment where they want to stay in, and that it's a very nurturing, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. But I will challenge you on something you said there.
Good.
That, you're talking about, we've got an abundance now of candidates and talent. That pendulum is going to swing back. It always does. And then we're going to say, as an employer or a hiring manager, what can you bring to me? What have you got? What separates you from the other candidates as well? So it's in the employees' park at the moment.
Yes.
And it's going to swing back. And we need to be ready for that as well. So I think from that learning and development, helping employees acquire new skills, a different skill set, and advance their careers, what that will do will support and go towards retention and engagement. So we don't have that high impact of employees leaving apart from any kind of natural attrition.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we could talk about this all day, but there's been a lot. You've unpacked a lot, and there's been a lot of changes that are coming up in the new financial year, workplace changes. But I actually came and met you at an event where you gave a one-pager, and it gave a bit of an overview of what the changes were. Is that something that we can probably put put as an attachment at the bottom of this podcast?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. In fact, that was just at a high level identifying all of the changes that came into effect from the 1st of July. I'm just about to push out another one actually for these August 26th one. So I'll send that through to you and you can attach that as well. If that helps any of your listeners, viewers out there, that would be fabulous because we're here to help. And what we're about is really focusing on that connection and cohesion in HR. And
that is so good. That's very generous and that'll be excellent. I'm sure a lot of people will be very appreciative of it. So changing tact a bit, what advice would you give young professionals who are aspiring to build a career in HR?
I think HR is awesome. I've really found my happy place. I loved where I was before. I feel I've brought a lot of knowledge and skills into where I am now. But HR is it. I would say to anyone looking to come into a career within human resources or people and culture is coming with a very open mind and I guess be wanting to make a change, make a difference and evolve. It's so exciting to be really such a strategic and critical part of a business to guide and navigate business owners, employers, leadership teams, and employees to be the best they can be, to support them to be the best they can be, but ultimately to meet the business's goals and objectives. So it's great. You've got access to all of this knowledge now. It's exciting times coming up with new technology. So anyone that's coming into this industry now, I would say, wow, wow, you have so much ahead of you that is going to be fabulous and so much that you can deliver. There's going to be challenges and there's going to be things that are tricky, but they will challenge you as an individual and help you with your journey of professional and personal growth as well. So I think we're all growing and learning. And the minute we stop doing that, it's lights out. So, we have to really just stay involved. I think it's a great industry. I highly recommend it to anyone that's passionate about change and support and growth.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And yes, the amount of learning, the amount of changes that are happening in a short period of time that you continuously, it's a continuum learning, isn't it? And
Never a
change.
dull moment.
Oh, I
Never
can
a
imagine.
dull moment.
So final question, the Gold Coast. What keeps you passionate about living on the Gold Coast? What is it about the Gold Coast that you love and think that everyone should know about?
I love the Gold Coast. I think I come from Sydney originally, from the Shire. So, yeah, we grow prime ministers down there in the Shire. But, it's coming up here with my family 10 years ago has probably been the best thing we've ever done. And it was prior to COVID. So it was a really informed decision that we made to quit Sydney. What I find so amazing about the Gold Coast, 10 years later, I still feel like I'm on holidays, by the way.
Yeah, true.
Which is great. The pressure's off. The people are welcoming. Business is to make businesses really support each other. That's something I feel that is amazing for the Gold Coast in particular. When you get into the capital cities, it's all very cold. Me personally, you have to work that extra hard yards to be able to get, in that front door and start building those relationships. But here, the networking events, the work that your department does, RDA does, Estella, is phenomenal. And it's just so good. You just do such a great job with connecting people. And it's a Gold Coast for me. I think it should be the new capital of Australia there. I'm putting it out there.
Sounds like a good idea, actually. But thank you so much. Look, it's been really interesting speaking to you about really important subjects. And as I said, I'll make sure I attach the brief that you're going to be doing. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute honour. Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.